Hi guys, Angel Eowyn here with the Angel Files. Yesterday, an article appeared in my email feed about a huge 300-metre wide hole that had appeared literally overnight on an Australian beach. This happened just recently in September of 2018, and it was not there the previous day. The beach in question here is located at Inskip Point, a scenic peninsula located in southeast Queensland, Australia. The first thing in the article that raised my antenna is this sentence. In an effort to calm worry about the collapsed section of the beach, local authorities categorised it as a near-shore landslip rather than a sinkhole. So they are categorising this as a landslip merely to quash concern and not because that is what they feel it is. A continuing phenomenon is erasing the coastline. This is not the first time that a large sinkhole has been reported on the beach. Wait, I thought it wasn't a sinkhole. Never mind. It was only 3 years ago that a 150-metre wide, 3-metre deep crater appeared. And when the large space opened up, it took a caravan, a car, a camper trailer and event tents along with it. It is caused by the undermining of part of the shoreline by tidal flow, waves and currents. When this occurs below the waterline, the shoreline loses support and a section slides seaward, leaving a hole, the edges of which retrogress back towards the shore. By all indications, the large landslips witnessed in all three cases are merely a result of naturally occurring phenomena and should be no cause for great alarm, although a modest space of only 400 metres exists between the three holes themselves. So basically, they don't really know what is causing these sinkholes. Sorry, I mean landslips, speaking of slips. We fly every day and it wasn't there yesterday, said a spokesperson of Rainbow Beach Helicopters. There seems to be mixed feelings about these events. Many reports are saying that this is normal, has always been this way, and they have managed to explain many of these events away. For example, due to the continuing rise of the sea level or winds. Yet many of the very same articles express surprise, and I see words such as unusual, rare, mysterious, and the word phenomenon appears quite frequently. A mysteriously massive hole in Antarctic ice has returned after 40 years. These kinds of holes are called Polynyas. The Polynya in question opened on September 9th of this year in a relatively shallow area of water in the Weddell Sea. At its peak, it spanned roughly 30,000 square miles, about the size of Maine. These holes in the ice form thanks to Antarctic water circulation, reports Maddie Stone at Eartha. Warm water rises toward the surface, melting the ice that sits atop the open ocean waters, creating the Polynya window. Heat is then released from the water through this opening, causing the now cooler water to sink. This circulation pushes more warm water towards the surface, which keeps the Polynya open. Here's the thing. These Polynyas usually form in coastal regions, towards the edge where it is warmer, but that is not what has happened here. This hole is far from the coast, hundreds of kilometres in fact, and is, quote, deep in the ice pack, and according to scientists must have been formed by some other process that is not understood. In other words, they have no idea how this hole was created. Apparently, it also has nothing to do with climate change. Check out SecureTeam's video on YouTube. I've supplied the link below. He goes into much more detail and also covers other stuff that has occurred on Antarctica. In 2014, The Independent wrote, "What are sinkholes? How do they form? And why are we seeing so many?" The UK seems to be suffering from a plague of sinkholes. In the past month alone, a 15-foot hole has opened up on the M2. A 30-foot crater swallowed a car in High Wycombe and in Hemel Hempstead. Homes were evacuated after a sinkhole 35 feet across opened up in a residential street. Meanwhile, in the US, an even bigger sinkhole, some 40 feet wide and 20 feet deep, swallowed up 8 rare cars in a Corvette museum. Other notable sinkholes include Cima Humboldt in Bolivia, a crater 314 meters deep and formed from extremely resistant sandstone. The Great Blue Hole, a perfectly round hole in the middle of an atoll which is 124 meters deep. And the Red Lake in Croatia, a 530 meter deep sinkhole with nearly vertical walls. Researchers aren't actually sure of the origins of these sinkholes in Venezuela. I then discovered 2 beaches in Ireland within 6 miles of each other that had disappeared and then reappeared. In Doag's case, the wind direction changed the hydrodynamics of the bay and may have washed in an offshore sandbank. But after a freak tide around Easter of 2017, hundreds of tons of sand were deposited around the area where the beach once stood, recreating the old 300-meter stretch of golden sand. Recalling the events of 1984, one person said, "Some big storms destroyed the beach. It was completely washed away, and 1984 was the last time the beach was there." So what, after 33 years it comes back? At the bottom of this article is a very intriguing sentence. This article was amended on 10th of May 2017 to remove a reference to Achill Island being a peninsula. What made them think this island was a peninsula? Did the geography change here? Reading the comments on some of these videos, you can see that there really are mixed feelings about these so-called sandbars. When a beach gets unlucky, and all of these factors come together, strong tides, abnormally high sea levels, a lack of seaweed, it can suddenly disappear. This is what apparently happened to Doag in spring 1984, and had previously happened in a similar incident there in 1890. So, what brought the beach back in 2017 and in 1927? Almost the same processes that stole it in the first place. Some of the conditions were identical. April has the highest tides of the year and low algal growth. However, this time, the beach replenishment occurred during northerly winds. It's hard to say for sure where the sand has been for the past 33 years, but likely it was simply sitting on the seafloor some miles offshore and in adjoining bays. I'm sorry, what? Adjoining bays? Have you seen these bays? Some of them are really isolated and closed off from each other, so the wind is able to transport sand from a bay around the corner and just plop it back to the bay it originally nicked the sand from in the first place. And nobody notices that the other bay now suddenly has a whole lot less sand. So Ashleam Bay Beach is only 6 miles from the previous beach, Doag. Dr. Kevin Lynch, a geographer at the National University of Ireland, Galway, told the Irish Times that returning beaches were nothing to do with climate change. With Ashleam Bay, the beach disappeared 12 years ago and reappeared again in 2017, some 6 months after the neighbouring beach. So here we have 2 beaches on the same coastline within 6 miles of each other. One lost its sand 33 years ago, the other 12 years ago, but both returned around the same time in 2017. Porthleven Beach in Cornwall was washed away overnight in 2015 and then reappeared 3 years later this year. This is the opening statement to this article. A British beach which was stripped of all its sand overnight by a freak high tide for the first time in living memory has miraculously been restored. An oceanographer from Porthleven, Alan Jorgensen, said that he has never seen the level of sand so low in all his years in the village. He said, "I am sure it will come back in time, but I've never seen it like this before. It was a bit of a surprise, to be honest." Well, you and me both, mate. Coombe Martin Beach in Devon disappeared in 2013 after torrential rain washed away all the sand. One person said he had never seen anything like it. At Hallsands Beach in Devon, a local said The continual storms have been eroding the shore like we've never seen before. This was at the bottom of the article. Climate irregularities are affecting many places around the globe, causing unusual manifestations, nice word, and sometimes severe and quick changes. All Sands Beach is one example of a swift and drastic transformation. In September of this year, the Cala Barques beach in Cala San Vicente lost half its beach. The principal cause was the torrent stream. Fast-flowing water brought with it rocks and a great deal of vegetation that were deposited onto the beach. There is also a slight discrepancy here, because some seem to think that the rocks which seem to appear once the sand is removed are actually rocks that were there beneath the sand and are subsequently revealed once the sand gets blown away. But as you've just heard, some seem to think that the rocks are actually being transported and deposited onto the beaches. In March of this year, Live Science reports mysterious island that emerged off the coast of North Carolina overnight is gone once again. Shelley Island, a sandbar that appeared seemingly overnight off the coast of Cape Point on Cape Hatteras Natural Seashore in 2017, has disappeared again, due to a series of punishing storms that battered the coast and redistributed the sand off the shoreline. It's not clear exactly why Shelley Islands formed in the first place, but experts suspect that the conditions were just right in July 2017, when winds and currents whipped sands from the northern barrier islands towards the southern point of the Cape. Shelley Island was at its largest extent in August 2017, when it measured 27 acres. However, the most recent images show it has once again receded beneath the waves. Erosion may have been the culprit. Over the winter, a series of storms continued to chip away at the tiny piece left of the island, and by February it was completely gone. Now, this is a science site, and even they think this is mysterious. Like I said, they don't really know what is causing this. However, in a NASA article, they say it is the natural movement of sediment that has built up a shoal island off the Outer Banks in North Carolina. In June of last year, 2017, National Geographic said this about the mysterious sandbar. This new formation is of a scale rarely seen. The crescent-shaped spit is close to a mile long. At its widest point, this island reaches a football field or more across. It's a hoss, says Danny Couch, 57, a local historian, tour guide and lifelong resident of nearby Hatteras Island. Every 10 to 15 years we'll get something that's pretty dramatic, but this one is the largest one I've seen in my lifetime. A 10-foot cliff seemed to come out of nowhere on a beach at Nags Head, North Carolina. So how did the face of the beach change so dramatically in such a short period of time? Experts say wind is to blame. They say extended periods of north and northeast winds can carve up a beach like this. It was also reported in August of this year that the beach is almost restored and that the erosion appears to be mostly gone. So a month later and 6 feet of sand has returned. Wow, and they are calling this erosion? In another article, experts speculate the cliff formed as a result of king tides. Quote, "I've never seen the erosion to that degree. Unbelievable," someone said. The escarpment is believed to have been created by a phenomenon known as Peregrine spring tides, also called king tides, which happen when the moon is either new or full and is closest to the Earth, according to NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. 2 different articles, same event, 2 different causes. Wind and king tides, otherwise known as Peregrine spring tides. And then we have a beach in California that collapses, Carlsbad State Beach in December 2015. One local said, "I've lived here since 1995. I've never seen it do this before." I think beach erosion is not exactly a new thing, but it seems to have increased lately, and I guess on its own it doesn't really stick out so much, but when you add this to the other beach phenomena that seems to have increased in the last few years, it certainly makes me think. And how can this be erosion? Isn't erosion where the beaches get eaten away over time and then completely disappear, never to come back again? Isn't that why they then step in and replace eroded beaches with artificial beaches? How can a beach erode overnight and then correct itself within weeks? Now, I don't know if I can explain this correctly, but this is very interesting for me because this next article was written in 2012, but about events that happened before then. Just like many of the articles, if not all, in this video, reporting on events that many don't seem to remember. And I see 2012 as a kind of time boundary. Many people in the Mandela-affected community believe that something happened around the 2012 time. So I would say that this might be the biggest shift we ever had. Therefore, I pay special attention to events that seem to have only appeared since then, and especially articles written only after this time point. And when I can't find articles written before 2012 on any particular phenomenon that many people don't seem to remember happening, that did apparently happen before 2012, then this starts to bleep on my radar. And this is the case here. So, in this article written in 2012, they talk about a small beach in New South Wales, Australia, that keeps disappearing and reappearing overnight. In May 2007, a large sand dump had turned Mackenzies Bay into a beach. By November 2007, the beach was gone again. What causes Mackenzies Bay to turn into Mackenzies Beach? It is linked to seasonal change, with the beach appearing when there is low pressure swell with an offshore wind. Greg Skilbeck, a sedimentary geologist from the University of Technology, Sydney, said the beach phenomenon occurred when waves swept sand onto the coast from nearby sandbars. It is a common occurrence for sand to end up on the shore during winter when you have increased wave energy. Dr. Rob Brander, a coastal geomorphologist from University of New South Wales, believes that what makes the Mackenzies come back is complex. Patterns of swell direction have a lot to do with it, but the amount of sand on our beaches is also linked to longer-term climatic cycles. The Daily Mail writes, "Rare phenomenon caused by Irma sucks the water from Bahama beaches. Firstly, if this is so rare, how come it happened all over the effing place?" The article goes on to explain, extraordinary footage from the Bahamas shows the shoreline receding much further than normal, exposing what is usually the ocean floor. Deputy weather editor of the Washington Post and meteorologist Angela Fritz explained that this may be the result of what she calls a hurricane bulge. In the center of the storm, pressure is very low, which draws water upward into itself. According to the Daily Mail, many were concerned since receding shorelines that expose the ocean floor is often a sign a tsunami is approaching. Well, that's what people believed prior to these events anyway. However, Fritz said the water will not rush back rapidly. The International Tsunami Information Center notes on its website, when the sea drains away, to not investigate because this is a typical sign of an incoming tsunami. While it looks like the prelude to a tsunami, the bizarre sight is actually a byproduct of Hurricane Irma, reports the Washington Post. Basically, the storm is so powerful that it's changing the shape of the water, sucking water from its surroundings into the core of the storm. My question is this: why didn't the Tsunami Information Center also state on their website that receding water can also be the result of storm surge?
It is. I've never seen anything like that. I didn't know that happened.
There's a name for it.
National Weather Service meteorologist Ryan Rogers explained the phenomena as a kind of reverse storm surge. When wind pushes water onto land, we get storm surge. What has happened in Tampa Bay is wind pushing water away from the shore. Time.com called this an eerie phenomenon that came as a result of the powerful hurricane. The centre of the storm has low pressure that draws water upward, according to the Washington Post. So newspapers are all quoting each other now? Wayne Neely, a forecaster with the Bahamas Department of Meteorology, wrote in a post on his Facebook wall that this phenomenon previously occurred in 1936 during a hurricane affecting Acklins Island in the Bahamas. He also warned that the water will come back soon, and residents should be cautious since the water's return may be powerful. Did you catch that contradiction? Earlier, Fritz said the water will not rush back rapidly, and now Neely said its return may be powerful. What Neely wrote in his post on Facebook, however, was not quite correct. Neely has since corrected his statement in Facebook, but he does go on to say that this has happened before in 1936. Well, in fact, the deeper I look into this, the more confusion I see. Apparently, this isn't so rare, at least not according to other people and Neely himself. Quote, "This has happened before recently, but in my research, it has happened in Hurricane number 5 of 1936 on the island of Acklins." So, if it has happened before, like recently, as he said, why not talk about that recent event? This whole sentence just doesn't even make sense to me. As I said, he originally wrote this post incorrectly, and people even commented and called him out on it. This whole thing didn't really tally up for me. One minute there was complete confusion because nobody had ever seen this before. Then suddenly everyone said, "Oh yeah, this happens all the time." And there is no information on this, or at least very little. Even people in the comments have said so. Basically, major media sites are quoting someone who has not explained this correctly. Another thing I've noticed is that these articles are just an exact copy and paste version of each other, really. There are people saying that this has happened a lot, and not only during a storm. And there lies another contradiction or two. One minute this is an extremely rare phenomenon, the next minute everyone is a bloody expert on it and knows how water recedes from a storm, which by the way has also been contradicted by other reports of water receding without storms. And don't forget the fact that tsunami experts had already stated in their website that a tsunami is the expected thing when the water recedes. They mention nothing of storm surges. So what is it? Is it rare or not? Is it caused by storm surges or not? Does anyone really know what the frig it is? But I just can't help but feel that something is not quite kosher here. Even if that was a hurried post to try and calm a lot of people down, you'd think that an expert would at least get his ups and downs right, even if he doesn't do it eloquently. Fact is, nobody knew what this was, and that's why they were all quoting each other. Suddenly though, now, when you look for information, everyone's a scientist. Somebody in these comments on Neely's post led me to the various videos that the YouTube channel Mr. MBB333 has uploaded. He reported quite extensively on all of these water anomalies throughout the world in YouTube at the time. Mr. MBB333 shows exactly the same thing happening in Brazil almost 2 weeks after Irma. He even talks about the fact that the advisories for upcoming storms do not mention that the beaches could turn into giant sandboxes. Scientists say the ocean receding phenomenon is due to a huge storm sucking up the waters, building up the storm surge. The Atlantic water receding phenomenon started in August 2017 in Uruguay, then in Brazil. But there are no giant storms off the coast. There is nothing sucking up the water. There is no reason or a tsunami. So why is the water disappearing mysteriously? Where is it all going? It seems that something else, another mysterious ocean phenomenon, is playing a major role in Southern America. To quote Mr. MBB333, Scientists often offer crass explanations when they haven't a clue what's going on. In this case, a cursory check of the weather satellites over the region shows once again this phenomenon started to be observed in mid-August, when there was no storm off the coast of Brazil. I then went on a search for the Acklins Island event that Neely had mentioned before, and I couldn't find anything referring to this happening before until I stumbled across this Fox News site. There are no earlier articles about this one event. The two articles I found referring to Acklins Island are both dated 2017, so after Hurricane Irma. All I know is that there is more here than meets the eye. My BS sensors are blipping like mad. There are so many contradictions here. I decided to research a bit deeper and find out just how often this has happened. I wanted to know how the experts suddenly knew that there would be no tsunami, especially since this is what the other experts were warning us about. I remember at the time that there was complete confusion, and I'm wondering now if somehow the history of this has changed at some point. On page 6 of my Google search list, I found this article on storm surge dated 2005, but there is no mention of water being sucked out of a beach or bay. They only talk about the dangers of flooding due to storm surge from a hurricane, and up to that point, all the articles were dated 2017 or 2018. I found another forum from TripAdvisor where somebody asks what happens after a hurricane passes through. The article is dated 2010. There is no mention of this phenomenon of water being sucked out. On page 10 of my Google search results, I found an article from 2006 warning of the dangers of tsunamis. Again, no mention of water receding. In another article dated 2011, they mention storm surges. The rising water, called storm surge, can submerge low-lying areas and towns along the coast. So here, they actually say that a storm surge can cause rising water, but not the opposite. I did find a new list of most devastating hurricanes and storms. None mention water receding, but only flooding due to storm surge. And a nice little PDF describing the characteristics of a hurricane. And yet again, no mention of water receding. At this point, I was on page 11 of my search results and really had no more desire to keep clicking the next button, so I decided to check Wikipedia. I called up hurricanes on Wiki and got redirected to tropical cyclones. I did a search on beach and disappear on the entire page, and just for good measure, I searched for the words recede and receding, and there was absolutely no mention of any of those words. So here we have an article of a beach in St. Martin where the water has disappeared. No hurricane. This happened in May 2016. They talk about strong winds, but there is a big difference between strong winds and a Category 4 hurricane, don't you think? In 2016, somebody wrote this in the TripAdvisor site comment section. Quote, "Is it me or did half of the beach at Maho Beach disappear overnight? I know there isn't much beach to begin with, but based on the view from the webcam, a good portion of the beach seems to have washed away overnight. Anyone else notice this or have an explanation?" There have been numerous reports lately of creeks, rivers, lakes and shores just drying up literally overnight on a global scale. The latest one is the Pamlico and Noisa rivers in North Carolina and Washington. Even the locals are saying that this is new. It is not a simple tide in, tide out thing. Neither is it a gradual decline of water like Utah's Great Salt Lake. It is literally happening overnight. According to some sources, this is being dubbed as blowtides. Is the water receding phenomenon due to the winter storm Riley currently engulfing the US East Coast? Or is this weird event due to the full moon tides? Either way, this is something new. According to this article, strong northwest winds across eastern Carolina are causing some riverbanks to become high and dry in Washington. The Pamlico River has set a new record for the lowest water level. Strong winds are pushing the water out. At the Washington boat ramp, the ramp is hardly in any water at all. Similar problems are also occurring in Newbern at both Union Point Park and Lawson Creek Park, where water from both the Noiser and Trent rivers are being pushed out. A totally unusual effect. When this phenomenon of water receding started around the Bahamas during Hurricane Irma in 2017, it was put down to the low pressure of the hurricane sucking up the water as it approached. But then we started seeing water receding in other places, as I've already mentioned earlier. Uruguay, Brazil, Ecuador, Chile, India, where there were no other hurricanes in the area at the time. OnPointPreparedness also confirmed what I thought about the contradictory statements from various media reports and articles. It seems they're all confused themselves as to what is causing all of these phenomena. The Potomac River disappeared in March 2018. At the same time, the other rivers in North Carolina emptied. They're saying that blowout tides are a side effect of strong winds coming from a storm, in this case, Storm Riley. Mr. MBB333 disagrees, and I'm inclined to agree with him. He has gathered lots of information about these water anomalies. I've left links to his videos below. In one video, he received an email from a subscriber giving him information from a boat captain who presumably spends 5 to 7 days on the water and pretty much knows the area and the water and how it normally behaves in this area. This captain noticed 3 things about the water that was suddenly different. Number 1, the currents are crossing over each other. This is visible because it looks as if the water is boiling. This causes turbulence, so the captain avoids these areas. Number 2, the ocean currents are coming way up into the lagoon. Number 3, the tides have changed, causing flooding and receding. He says that these changes started around 3 years ago. There is a lake up in the mountains of Oregon that disappears every year. Native Americans call this place Quonuksamach, or unknown. The lake drains through a lava tube and just disappears. But no one knows where the tunnel leads or where the water goes. And then we have the atmospheric tsunamis that were also discussed within the ME groups. Another rare phenomenon occurred on the island of Malta in March of this year, where so-called atmospheric tsunamis, also known as Sichi waves, are causing flooding within the streets. I remember this when it happened, and we were all like, what the frig are Sichi waves? I don't even know how to pronounce it. It is also known locally as Milguba. Now, I've spent a lot of time in Malta, and I've never heard of these. Something also just occurred to me. This year alone, because of the extreme weather, there have been many ancient sites and monuments uncovered that may not have been discovered otherwise, at least not in the foreseeable future. That is something else to think about. Yet another phenomenon that has apparently appeared just recently to change drastically. It was fairly common in Florida, but now it is a worldwide phenomenon. Locals in Florida who have seen the red tide countless times have been reported to have said that they have never seen it like this before. It now stretches from the Gulf of Mexico up to Fort Lauderdale. While this may or may not be a Mandela effect, there are many unusual and rare events involving our coastlines happening all over the world in unusual places lately, and while some of them have been explained away, there seems to be many left unexplained, which in itself does not necessarily constitute a Mandela effect, but certainly is a clue, as far as I'm concerned, that things are happening in a way that were not happening before, that are causing even the experts to flap around with surprise and throw out various theories haphazardly, instead of just admitting that this is new and that they have no idea what is causing it. And they are just that, theories. What is also interesting is that there is no name given for the phenomenon of the sand disappearing and reappearing. Erosion is listed, but this is not the same. Sand disappearing overnight is not erosion, especially when it returns. In the term landslides in Wikipedia, landslips is there, and it covers erosion vaguely, but not sand being removed and replaced from other beaches. An idea is beginning to form in my head with regards to all of these events and phenomena lately, and it's to do with the geographical changes that the Mandela affected have been observing. I'm wondering if there is a connection of some kind. I mean, we have huge sinkholes appearing overnight, beaches and coastlines disappearing and then reappearing, water and sand being transported from one place to another, large sandbanks appearing and disappearing, thus changing the shape of coastlines. We as Mandela affected know that there have been geographical changes that are still occurring. So my question is, could this be connected in any way? I realise that the geographical changes are not on the same scale as these small islands and beaches that keep appearing, but I can't help but wonder if there is some kind of connection, and it just seems strange to me that we have these changes concentrated in the last few years. And even though many believe that the Mandela effect has actually been around for a long time, it has appeared to peak within the last few years. Are all of these things a demonstration of timelines merging? Or are they simply due to winds, tides, or storm surges, as the experts keep saying? Or is it early signs of a pole shift, as others have suggested? Are the earthquakes stronger in this reality? Whatever it is certainly unusual. With many of these events, there are also reports from locals who have lived in these areas their entire lives, and even they have never seen this kind of weather anomaly. The thing is, these things seem to be happening more and more in the last couple of years, and many this year and last. And I don't believe it's mainly because of internet coverage that we're now seeing this. I see this a lot in my comments here, that the only reason we're now hearing about such things is because we now have the internet, YouTube and Facebook. Let me just give you some quick dates here. The internet became mainstream in 1993. YouTube has been around since 2005 and Facebook since 2004. I had actually completed putting the video together and I stumbled across a video in Real Video, which is where I now have started recently to upload my videos in addition to YouTube. The title of the video is October 2018 Storm Surge. There's a new frequency in town. The Arcturian High Council brings together a powerful message and planetary energy update for October 2018. The storm surge they describe is not coming solely from intense weather patterns, but from a new frequency in town that is cleansing and clearing energies that are incongruent and incompatible with the new 5D light codes rising on the planet.